Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Tim Scott Uncancelled with me, Tim Scott. It's great to have you with us. Thank you for joining us, whoever you are, wherever you are, or however you are watching or listening. And talking of wherever, I'll tell you a great place to find us is on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and you type into the search box Unprecedented TV, scroll down, you'll find us. And if you could give us a cheeky follow or subscribe, then that would be so much the better. And we'd love to see you again here on Unprecedented TV. Well, so the format of the show is there'll be a few words from me first. And then after that, we'll introduce our guest. We have a guest as ever. And this week, in a moment, we'll be delighted to be joined by Simon Calvert of the Christian Institute. Great to have him on. And looking forward to welcoming him in a minute. Well, folks, what times we live in. And as ever on the show, we go through the stories, we look behind the front pages to make sure that you get the news, you get the stories, you get the stuff that you won't necessarily hear on the mainstream media and that probably won't be on the front page, but they tend to be the more nuggety, the more interesting stories for you. So here we are in 2026, and we have a different government to what we had for the last 14 years. And what sort of state are we in Britain? A constant theme of this show is how this country, Britain, has so much going for it, but yet we have such deeply embedded problems and troubles that seem almost intractable. But I think they're solvable. And so in post-Christian Britain, what do we face? I think we're a more fragmented, a less cohesive, a less trusting society. But there's signs of growth, there's signs of hope, there's signs of renewal. And just the other day, I came across, just to give you an example of some of the troubles that we're facing, I came across some very interesting statistics. On LBC with Tom Swarbrick, there was James Reed, the CEO of the Reed Employment Company. And he was talking about the cost of employing people. And he gave a very interesting example of employing a 21-year-old for 40 hours a week on the minimum wage. Now, this could be a pub or any other kind of employer. And the cost of employing that person has gone up hugely from 2020 to 2026 in just 6 years, due to minimum wage, employees' national insurance, all that kind of thing. And the figures that he gave was the cost of employing, all in, the cost of employing that 21-year-old, minimum wage on a 40-hour week. In 2020, it was £17,600 a year. Now it is £29,600. So from 17,000 to nearly 30,000 in just 6 years. Now, these kind of jobs are more than useful. They're useful to the economy. These sort of starter jobs in hospitality, pubs, cafes, hotels, restaurants, these kind of jobs, of course, they're useful to the economy. They help the economy grow. They help serve the public. They drive tax revenue. But these kind of jobs also, what you might call the starter jobs, the kind of first jobs that people did, you know, like many of you probably. I was doing a paper round when I was 14, and I worked on a building site once for a couple of summers when I was a student. I was a temporary postie for a Christmas or two. I'm sure many of you did these kind of jobs. These kind of jobs serve a useful social purpose, which is to get people into the habit of a lifetime of work. And if you start working earlier, you're more likely to lead a healthy, productive life in work. Okay, so that's my sort of opening remarks over. So we'll now move on, and we've got some different stories for you. And we're very chuffed to welcome our guest. Today, we have a guest every week, and we're very, very delighted that Simon Calvert of the Christian Institute can join us. Simon, you're looking very puckered there. Welcome to the show.
Pucker is my thing. Very glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure here on Unprecedented TV. Simon, I think we first met at the Battle of Ideas, didn't we?
I think we probably met even earlier than that. I think probably 10, 12 years ago or something, some free speech campaign or other.
Yeah, good stuff. Just tell us a little bit about the Christian Institute and, you know, where can people find you?
So the website is www.christian.org.uk. So that's christian.org.uk. We're also, you can find us on all your favourite socials. We are based in Newcastle upon Tyne, but a national organisation with offices in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland also, and expanding also into Ireland. We have got 60-odd thousand supporters all across the UK, including I think something like 5,500, 6,000 churches and church leaders. And so we've been around for 35 years, and I've been here for 30 years, helping the church to get to grips with some of the kind of tricky social issues, and just encouraging people to be faithful to Christ and to the Christian faith, but also kind of outward looking, helping people to speak to the world outside the doors of the church. And that can mean getting involved in campaigns and stuff in Parliament and the media and all of that fun stuff.
Good. Okay. I mean, it can be fun sometimes. Doesn't all have to be serious. Okay, Simon. So thanks for that intro. So christian.org.uk is where they can find you.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, look, folks. Yes, we've got great to have Simon with us on the show, and we've got 4 stories for you today. And the first story is quite a controversial one, and one of a number of things that the government is trying to push through without any electoral mandate, I would say. A bit like trials without a jury, all that sort of stuff. And it's to do with assisted dying. And so this is the assisted dying bill that is trying to go through Parliament. And I've got a bit of a blurb here from the BBC. But Simon, why don't you give us your take on this first?
It's hard to know where to start. I probably just want to address the fact that there'll be people watching this who feel like they support assisted suicide, who feel like people should have a choice over when and how they die, because they fear a painful death and a difficult death. And I think that I want to say to people who take that view, I think that our fears around this issue have been stoked unnecessarily by people who want to get this particular change to the law. And I wish that all of the time that we'd spent in Parliament and in the media debating assisted suicide had been spent instead debating palliative care, how to improve palliative care. Because if we had done that and made practical improvements to palliative care, we would have done much more good in the world than a bill which would give, which would mean that sick people get given poison by the state to kill themselves. I mean, you only have to put it that way. And even in the polling that appears to show people a majority support assisted suicide, and I'm deliberately calling it assisted suicide, I can come back to that. Once people understand the reality of what changing the law would mean, they are much less likely to support it. And it is assisted suicide. Assisted dying is a euphemism. People are assisted whilst they are dying all the time. Those of us, and it's probably most of us, who have cared for people in their final months and weeks and days and hours and been at their bedside, we know that we have assisted people who are dying. But what we did not do was give them poison to kill themselves. And once you do that, you are into the realm of suicide, somebody actively ending their own life and you being complicit in doing that. And there's a very, very, very important kind of moral gulf between those two things. So the term assisted dying is designed to mask that gulf. So it's assisted suicide. And the bill that's currently in Parliament from Kim Leadbeater, backbench bill from Kim Leadbeater, the Labour MP, being pushed through the House of Lords by Lord Falconer, Labour peer, that bill amends the 1961 Suicide Act. Yes. I think that's pretty compelling evidence that we're talking about.
The link with suicide cannot be denied. It's actually in the DNA, if you like, of the bill.
Yes, exactly. And occasionally in interviews on the BBC, Lord Falconer has slipped up and talked about people taking their own lives, which is exactly what his legislation would do. And my point that the more people hear about assisted suicide, the less likely they are to support it. That, I think, was demonstrated in the Commons, where support from MPs between the first major vote and the final major vote fell.
Yes.
So it was a much closer margin by the end of the Commons consideration of the bill.
Yeah.
And in the House of Lords, again, I think what we're seeing is that there are people who support assisted suicide in principle, would like it for themselves, but because they are, and I'm going to say this, honourable people, they cannot support this bill because they see what this bill would mean. They see, for example, that disability groups do not support this legislation. They see that there are no royal colleges that support this legislation.
Yes.
They see that the Royal College of Psychiatrists, who are being asked to provide 1/3 of the membership of the death panels to make the bill work, they, again, whilst not having a position on assisted suicide itself, are opposing this bill. And so these honourable people who, obviously I profoundly disagree with them in their support in principle for assisted suicide, but they are honourable to, they see that this bill cannot work, it doesn't work. And I've sat down face to face with politicians who say, I would want to be able to do this myself, but I see what this bill would mean for people in my area, my constituency, who can't access the care that they want. They can't access the palliative care that they want. And so introducing assisted suicide into that is not giving those people choice. It's actually putting them in a situation where they are under pressure, they are under a subtle kind of coercion to choose to opt for something that they don't really want. And the evidence coming out of Canada on this is overwhelming. You know, Dignity in Dying, the Voluntary Euthanasia Society, who are behind this bill, have been pushing for this bill for years. They pointed to Canada as the great example of how this would work, a shining city on a hill to show how assisted suicide would just work absolutely fine. And then for the past several years, we've had story after story after story coming out of Canada of what it means of sick and disabled people being offered assisted suicide when they don't want it, being offered assisted suicide instead of help.
Yeah, there are some terrible stories.
And they've stopped talking about Canada because they know that it's, there's too many inconvenient truths.
Yeah. So assisted dying, I mean, thank you for those comments, Simon. I think assisted dying, surely you might say when someone's very ill, people, this often happens with very elderly parents. Withdrawing, asking for treatment to be withdrawn. I think that could be described as assisted dying.
Yes, and there's a world of difference between that and giving them poison to kill themselves. Yeah.
And it will change the whole relationship between people and the NHS and between people and the state.
Oh,
the Hippocratic oath that doctors take: first, do no harm.
Yes.
So really, this is a huge story. And it looks like, Simon, final comment, it looks like that the Lords might be able to hold it up until the end of the parliamentary session in May. There's going to be a bit of a constitutional ding dong between the Lords and the Commons, but it wasn't in Labour's manifesto, so the Lords are not obliged to have to agree to it, are they?
Yeah, I mean, there were people in the Commons who passed the bill on the basis that the Lords would scrutinise it. And now that the Lords just scrutinise it, people are saying they must stop scrutinising it because they're just filibustering and delaying. And I want the House of Lords, to use your phrase, I want them to do more than to just kind of, hold the bill back until May. I want them to scrutinise it. I want them to do what they're doing, to table in amendments, to speak to amendments, to expose what's wrong with the legislation. I want to win the argument that this bill does not work. I don't just want to slow it down. I don't just want it to run out of time. I want to win the argument, and we are winning the argument, and that's what is upsetting Lord Falconer and his allies so much. And so Lord Falconer, who in the past has been a staunch defender of the duty of the House of Lords to scrutinise legislation and a staunch defender of the right of the House of Lords to block legislation, all of a sudden he's talking about the Lords scrutinising as if it's some kind of constitutional crisis. And they're even talking about using the Parliament Act to force it through. It's an absolute outrage. And impossible.
That would be very controversial. Okay, so I
can't see it happening.
No, I think it would be a bit of a nuclear option, wouldn't it? Okay, let's move on to the next story. And this is something that you at the Christian Institute came out with. This is the Street Preachers Charter. So Simon, why did, there's been some high profile cases here of people being dragged off the street after one complaint. Why did you feel the need to come out with this?
So the Christian Institute, we provide legal help through our legal defense fund, that is, to help Christians who are experiencing discrimination or mistreatment for their faith. And so we've often helped street preachers. And yes, I mean, I could list so many cases. I think of the chap who was preaching on the streets of, I think it was Glasgow, just a couple of years ago. And a police officer marched up to him and announced that he'd said something about homosexuality, and that was offensive, and that she was going to arrest him. He hadn't said anything about homosexuality. And even if he had, she didn't have a right to arrest him. And that's not a photograph of our chap. That looks very dramatic, doesn't it? But yes, that sadly is the sort of thing that happens. Now, in that case, we were able, not only were the charges dropped, but we were able to help that street preacher to sue the police and get a settlement. And indeed, in his case, they tried to record a non-crime hate incident against him, which is something else, and we managed to get that deleted. But what we concluded from our experience, and we have an excellent lawyer here, Sam Webster, our head of legal, he has co-written this Street Preachers Charter, because we're looking at both sides of the equation. We're looking at what the legal situation is, what the legal rights are, and we're seeking to encourage police and those in authority to recognize and respect and uphold the legal rights of street preachers, because you have rights. You have a right to speak in public. You have a right to preach, use that freedom of speech to preach the gospel or whatever else it is you want to do. And so we want the authorities to respect those rights. But what we also want to do is we want to address street preachers, Christians who do take to the streets, and give them advice about how to go about it in a wise and winsome way. And so we're looking at addressing both ends of that spectrum. I was absolutely delighted that Lord MacDonald of River Glaven, Casey, agreed to endorse that Street Preachers Charter. He's the former director of public prosecutions. Yes. And so I think that reflects the fact that this is a very sort of carefully written document, which I think, street preachers and police officers alike can hopefully use and embrace.
Yeah. So the church that we attend, and interesting there, just the studios put that up. We'll come a little bit more. That's got a double relevance, that story that's just come up to our next story as well. The church that we go to, they do some sort of gentle street outreach, and often people are happy to come up and talk. It's not deafening the whole high street with your high powered megaphone, right, or sort of dragging people across the road to hear what you've got to say. Often people come up. And sometimes they're just happy to talk. They're happy to take a copy of Mark's Gospel, which the church has got in an easy to read format. Sometimes they ask for a prayer to be said to lift them up before God and to encourage them. Sometimes it's all a bit, not you lot again. You can get that, but it's got to be. I think if it's over aggressive, then it's counterproductive.
Well, it's sub-Christian if it's over-aggressive, isn't it? It's not exactly a good witness to what you say you're preaching. And that's one of the things where the point of the Street Preachers Charter, it's available on our website from the front page, christian.org.uk. He's looking at those kind of wisdom issues. But to your point, there is an interest, isn't there? There is a resurgence of interest in the Christian faith.
I think people are very open. People are very open, and I think even in post-Christian Britain, in fact, I think especially in post-Christian Britain, in times of uncertainty and great change, people are looking at the many difficult challenges our country faces,
and the meaning crisis, and Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
there is a crisis in meaning, Simon. Who are we? Who am I? Who are we? Why are we here? What's my identity and all this sort of stuff.
And one of the things that's driving it is that people see, I'll use the example of transgender ideology. And not only people saying, I personally, although I was born male, identify as a female, not that they necessarily describe it that way, they're saying, you must believe that I really am a female and that I've always been a female. And if you dare to not fully cooperate with me in this, I will get you into trouble. There's a lot of people who will be quite kind of tolerant about what choices an individual makes. But once they are told, no, you have got to say that I am really a woman and you have got to celebrate this with me, they say, no, I can't do that. And so that's why I mean, public support for transgender rights has gone through the floor.
It has.
Because they pushed it too far. They pushed people too far. You've got only a third of people think that you should be able to legally change your sex. Half of the population don't think that, and that's a law that's been on the statute book since 2004. And I know because I worked on it against it, obviously. And puberty blockers and gender self-ID, the public do not support this stuff. They know and love their transgender friends and neighbors, but they are just not prepared to go along with that ideology.
Yes, indeed, Simon. I think initially many of us, probably me included, felt, well, just let people be who they want to be. But then we started with the whole issue with toilets and changing rooms and men in women's sports, and you've got to agree that I really am a woman. I was very grateful to Lord Winston, the Labour peer, the distinguished sort of scientist and doctor who on BBC Question Time said, you cannot change your biological sex. I mean, you can't. Biological sex is binary. So however we should be tolerant and friendly and accepting of people, there are some genuinely sort of quite deep issues here. People who are biologically male in women's prisons, that issue is still rumbling on in Scotland. And
the Darlington nurses case helped by our friends over at Christian Concern. I mean, that's just remarkable, and really, what happened to those women is terrible. They were really badly treated. Yes, and so that's a very good outcome for them, and I think we can all be grateful for that. And just the cut through of that. Similarly, the Supreme Court ruling that 4 Women Scotland secured last year on the meaning of the word sex in equality legislation, just a profound rebirth of common sense.
Yes,
for which most of the country breathed a huge sigh of relief.
Yes, indeed. Simon, thank you. Okay, so folks, here on Unprecedented TV, we don't just treat you with Tim Scott Uncancelled. No. We have other shows. Some of them are pretty good, actually, and really worth watching. And as I said, you can find us on YouTube, Unprecedented TV. Give us a cheeky follow or subscribe. So, we're now going to find out about some of the other shows that you can watch here on Unprecedented TV. And here it is. Here's Okay, thank you, studio. Yes, so that's Dire Consequences with Claire Dyer. Okay, so 2 more stories to run. And let's move on to our next story. I think it's quite a sad one, actually. And this one is from The Guardian. Abortion at record high in England and Wales, driven by cost of living. The Guardian has a particular take on this, as you might appreciate, but we try and cover as many angles as possible here. And we'll get Simon's view in a minute. But it says here, the rising cost of living and lack of access to contraception has driven another rise in abortion rates in England and Wales, providers and doctors have said. Government statistics released on Thursday showed that abortion increased by 11% compared to 2023. The age standardized abortion rate for women is 23 abortions per 1,000, the highest rate since the Abortion Act was introduced in 1967. Simon, I find this quite an upsetting story, actually, and just a bit of a tragic story, really.
It's interesting that the quotes in that Guardian article from some of the kind of pro-abortion groups are indeed abortion providers. Whilst they deny that there's any such thing as the right number of abortions, which is them trying to sort of avoid the idea that there's anything wrong one way or the other with it, they do open the door to the idea that there are women having abortions and those babies not living who, in a different set of circumstances, financial circumstances, could go ahead and give birth to those children and enjoy those children. And I thought that was a bit of a concession for them to make, because this is the point. And again, not all of your viewers will agree with me on the principal issue here, but life in the womb is life. You and I were once zygotes, embryos, fetuses, and then we were born. And if either one of us had had our life end at the stage of zygote or fetus or embryo, then we, as a person, would have ceased to exist. If William Shakespeare had been killed in the womb, there would have been no William Shakespeare. The human person is a continuous human person from the start of the process. And the humanity of the unborn has been brushed aside in our culture in a push for ever more liberal abortion laws. And the reality of what abortion is masked, I'm afraid, in the same way that proponents, and I'm not saying that everybody who agrees with assisted dying agrees with abortion, but in the same way that proponents of assisted suicide call it assisted dying, in abortion, there is a terrible use of euphemism to hide the reality of what we are doing. And there's an awful hardening, I think, of our consciences that takes place. And here we are. We're seeing abortion at the highest rates recorded. Just to acknowledge the work of our friends over at Right to Life, who estimate that in 2023 across the United Kingdom there were 299,614 abortions. And they point out that the increase goes across the subdivisions. There were 3,205 disability selective abortions in 2023, an increase of 81 from the previous year. 300 late-term abortions of babies with disabilities at 24 weeks and over in England and Wales, another increase. 735 babies with Downs were aborted in 2023, 40 abortions where the baby had a cleft lip or a cleft palate. So we think of people we know with cleft lip, we think of people we know who live with Downs, and the idea that that's a reason to end the life of a child in the womb.
And of course, again, not in the Labour manifesto, but we now have abortion decriminalised, which effectively makes it legalised up to birth now, Simon, don't we?
Yes, so that was a backbench amendment in the Commons from Labour MP Tonia Antoniazzi, and yes, that was a horrible moment, I think, really in the life of our nation when MPs backed that. So it's in the House of Lords. The House of Lords will debate it for the first time on Monday, the 2nd of February. They will debate it again in March, and we can expect that there would be a vote.
I mean, Simon, I don't often use this word, but that is an evil law.
I think that is a correct word, and
yeah.
And, I mean, if you believe that life that the child is a child in the womb if you want it, but not a child in the womb if you don't want it, you are engaging in some very serious self-deception. And semantics and language does not change the status of that life in the womb. I mean, the focus here, as you say, is that the amendment from Tonia Antoniazzi decriminalizes abortion up to birth for the mother, not for the medical practitioners or anyone else, but for
true.
And the fact is, of course, that they say that it's terrible that women can be prosecuted for having abortions. The reality is that it's vanishingly rare, and the reality is that the few cases that we have seen in recent years have come about because of pills by post.
Yes.
So that change, which would be temporary during a lockdown, which then became permanent, means that women are not seeing a medical professional in order to assess their health and how far along they are in the pregnancy. They're able to obtain abortion pills just by telephone conversation with the nurse. So there's no real assessment of the woman or indeed of the child in the womb. And then they are left to have the abortion at home on their own.
And there's been
Caring for
cases.
women.
There's been cases where this has procured a very late term abortion by as I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Simon, but a late term abortion has been carried out by basically lying about the stage of pregnancy.
Yes. There's been at least one case where I think the person must have claimed to have been 9 weeks and was actually sort of 30 something weeks. So, but whatever the details, yes, there was a big discrepancy.
And then left to have that abortion alone at home alone.
Yes.
I mean, that must have been horrendous.
So, I mean, if those who advocate for abortion claim that they're concerned about women, they should want women to be able to see a doctor and be supervised by a doctor when they have an abortion. And if people who support abortion are concerned that women are sort of get proper medical care, it just seems to me obvious that they should not support these kind of routine at-home abortions. And the abortion statistics that we were just considering clearly is a major at-home abortions is a major contributory factor to that surge in the number of abortions. And that's before we even get to how do you find out if a woman's being coerced? How do you find out if her boyfriend is not obtaining abortion pills and crushing them up in a drink and giving them to her when she doesn't even know?
There's been at least one case that's gone to court of, whatever you want to call it, coercive control, is it? Where, the boyfriend was, basically forcing the poor woman to take these pills.
And while all this is happening, you then have, not only do you have attempts to further and further liberalise the law on abortion. I mean, in Scotland, the Scottish Government commissioned an expert advisory group to look at abortion, and they recommended total abortion decriminalisation, allowing doctors to sign off on abortions at any stage of gestation for any reason.
No doubt a carefully selected group of experts.
Well, as always, and
independent inquiry,
yes. But I mean, again, I would want to be fair on this point. There are people who support abortion who are opposed to these moves. They are opposed to sex-selective abortion. They are opposed to decriminalisation up to birth, and so you look at people. The MP Rebecca, whose name will come to me in just any minute now, a Conservative MP who wrote recently in the newspapers, explaining that while she supports abortion, she can't support these measures. And again, I want to be fair to people like that. And I think there is a concern. I think that the callousness, frankly, of saying we don't care if a baby is aborted 2 days before it birth, there cannot ever be any kind of investigation into the mother's choice. And again, what that does, if you decriminalize it for the mother, and she knows that however far along she is, she can have an abortion and no one will ever ask her any questions about it. But if she can't get one on the NHS or at the clinic, where's she going to go? So is this a return to backstreet abortions? Because there will be nefarious people who will happily, for money, provide that woman at 30-odd weeks gestation with a backstreet abortion.
Yes, Simon. I mean, this is a deep controversial issue. People will have, not all of our viewers will agree.
Yeah.
And, we should always respond to people with compassion and concern and a love for them and for their unborn child. And of course, then we get to, the woman who's been arrested for silently praying nearby an abortion clinic.
Yes. So I think Alliance Defending Freedom are representing, ADF representing Isabel Vaughan Spruce. And I mean, again, the idea that we get to, I mean, I don't think there was any need for the change in the law. I think that anybody being harassed anywhere near an abortion clinic, that is already against the law. I think that these abortion buffer zones legislation, I think it was purely ideological. But nobody ever, the idea that law would apply to what you are silently thinking in your head. I mean, what is it a law against being pro-life in a public place? Well, how far do you have to go? We have a case different from Isabel Vaughan Spruce's in Northern Ireland. A chap by the name of Clive Johnston, a retired pastor. He held an open-air service on the fringes of an abortion buffer zone. And I just want to emphasize this. He said not a single solitary syllable about abortion. There were no placards. He didn't have a little anti-abortion badge or anything like that. It was an open-air gospel service where they preached on John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. The most famous verse in the Bible. That is all he did. And yet the police and the prosecution service in Northern Ireland are prosecuting him. And so we're helping Clive in his defense. And so again, who would have thought that a law allegedly designed to stop abortion protests would be used to criminalize somebody for preaching the gospel?
And then we've got this issue: pro-lifer arrested in the UK wins financial settlement. I'm glad the record is being set straight, Simon, with some of these cases.
Yes, that's right. And there are several cases, and I think that and there have been some wins and there have been some losses. But I think that, again, I think that the public, when they see these cases, many people think, well, I support abortion and I'm not keen on sort of anti-abortion protests, but really arresting somebody for silently praying inside their own head. That video of I think it wasn't Isabel, I think it was another ADF client called Adam Smith Connor, being asked by a police officer, what are you doing? And he says, praying. And the police officer says, what are you praying about?
None of your business.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's being arrested for thought crime. I mean, at the risk of aging myself, it rather reminds me of the Constable Savage character played by Griff Rhys-Jones in Not the 9 O'Clock News, who is being grilled by his inspector, played by Rowan Atkinson, for Mr. Kadogo, arresting Mr. Kadogo for wearing a loud tie in a built-up area.
Yes.
I mean, and what was the other one? Treading on the cracks in the pavement. I mean, it reminds me of some of these arrests. Yeah. Okay. So, yes, an interesting story. I mean, I used the evil word later. I mean, earlier. I mean, I do think. I mean, don't get me wrong there. But I think the way this law is being proposed to facilitate and to make abortion up to birth an easier thing to do. Mm-hmm. That is certainly a terrible. I think it would be terrible. Let's put it.
Yes, I mean, just on your
terrible if it was passed.
Yes, and just on your use of the word evil. I mean, I like you. I'm reluctant really these days to use that, because people will misrepresent what you're trying to do. But we can love people who we disagree with whilst profoundly disagreeing with their point of view. And we have a right to sort of call things as we see them, as do those who disagree with us. And so, yes, and I think it is important to have kind of moral clarity around these things, whilst recognizing, there is a range of views and we have to be able to talk to one another. That is one of the key things. And I know that's what you're all about, is, whatever, wherever we are on the spectrum, we have to defend one another's right to.
We do. To speak. And it's fair to say, yes, on the one hand, abortion stops a beating heart, but on the other hand, many women do face very difficult choices here.
Yes.
And if a woman, we should also acknowledge, I mean, I think this debate would be considerably improved if pro-choicers or pro-abortion lobby would acknowledge that abortion stops a beating heart. But if pro-lifers, if we can call ourselves that, if we would also similarly acknowledge that if a woman in a really difficult situation cannot get an abortion legally and safely, she may well end up getting one illegally and unsafely. And I mean, if both sides would acknowledge that, it would help.
I mean, I would want to say that, of course, I would want, again, to win the argument. I don't mean I want to be on the right side of the argument. I mean, persuade people, and that includes caring for people, helping people, being with people. And I want to say, on behalf of pro-lifers and on behalf of Christians in my own community who I know, they are the kind of people who will be with you through thick and thin. And if you have an abortion and you make a choice that they don't agree with, they are the people who will still be on the other end of the phone. They're the people who will still be at your front door the next day if you want them there. And, I think that is the way to be on this. We must, stand up for what we believe is right, but we must still love people in. And as you say, I think what you're trying to get at is that there are women who find themselves in situations that they find utterly intolerable, and some of those women are genuinely terrified, and we have to acknowledge the reality of what they're experiencing, and we have to try and be there for
and
anyone
if
who wants us to be there.
Particularly as we discussed earlier, if you've got an unsupportive or even hostile partner, that's a very difficult situation to be. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of the show. We've got time for one more story, and this story really it's an interesting one. It's really to do with, it's connected with Pride, the Pride Month and the Pride events and Pride marches, the issue here is civil service neutrality. Nobody is saying that Pride should be banned or that civil servants shouldn't be allowed to attend Pride events. But Simon, over to you to talk about this, because this is a case that you guys have taken up.
Yes, so we have lodged papers to take the government to court, and as it happens, you have to name the Prime Minister in the papers because he's overall responsible for the civil service. I very much doubt that he will be appearing in court, and we are invoking the laws on civil service impartiality and saying, as you say, if civil servants want to go in their own time to a march for or against anything they like, they can do that. But what's happening right now, and what has been happening for years, is the civil service is actively encouraging civil servants to go on Pride marches, LGBTQIA plus marches, which have heavily skewed in recent years in favor of trans ideology. They're being actively encouraged to go on these marches. They are being, we understand they're going on work time, being paid to go. They are certainly being provided with civil service Pride branded T-shirts and flags to wave, all of which, again, civil service and
at public expense.
And so what we say is that must be a breach of the law on civil service impartiality. They're not meant to take sides on controversial issues. And, it then kind of works its way through, because I've sat down in any number of meetings with civil servants where we might be talking about transgender issues or a clash between Christian belief and LGBT ideology. And the civil servants are wearing rainbow lanyards. So, I mean, if they were wearing a gigantic cross, then you might think, well, they're definitely on my side, Danny. But if they're wearing a rainbow, and of course they wouldn't wear a cross and you wouldn't want them to, but they're wearing a rainbow lanyard, that they've pretty much already made their minds up about the subject you come to talk to them about. And the reason why I'm confident that we're going to win this legal action is because of Lindsay Smith. Now, Lindsay is, amongst other things, a Newcastle United supporter, a lesbian, and she took Northumbria Constabulary to court, and Newcastle United, two different things. She took the police to court over the fact that the chief constable was marching in a pride parade and encouraging officers
not just policing it, but joining the parade.
Exactly. Policing a march.
That's the difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any marches, whatever the cause, if it's an organized march, they're entitled to the same kind of protection and facilities as anybody else. But no marching on it. And so Lindsay won her case against Northumbria Police that they had breached their legal duties of impartiality because the Pride cause was, in the words of the court, political. And who could doubt it? I mean, London Pride, presumably the one where officials from Whitehall march, they have banned political parties from attending because those political parties, in their view, aren't sufficiently supportive of transgender rights. Things like gender self-ID. They don't like the Supreme Court.
How very tolerant and inclusive of them, Simon.
Right. So it's a profoundly political cause. It's not just a kind of a happy day out with coloured flags. It's a political purpose. And so civil servants should not be being paid to represent the civil service. And I want to stress that. I've seen the emails and the encouragements to civil service to attend marches, and they're told you are representing the civil service at this march. And I think it's a grave mistake, and I think we're going to win that case.
Good. I hope you do. Well, Simon, great to have you on with us. Simon Calvert from the Christian Institute. Simon, just remind us where people can find you.
So our website is christian.org.uk, or you can find us on X, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, and probably something else that I've forgotten. But we are out there with some great videos on YouTube as well.
Simon, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, great episode there with Simon Calvert of the Christian Institute, I thought. So that's it for this time, and join us again here on Unprecedented TV. And thank you for joining us for Tim Scott Uncancelled with me, Tim Scott. We'll see you next time.